Good morning. Say, Miss, good morning, everyone. No, it's lovely having you back after your summer break. Did you have a lovely summer?
Yes.
Yes, good. There's no housekeeping today. We all know the bell goes, it's 10 o'clock. We can't see the minute to start late, it's 10 o'clock. And I personally like to start in time and finish early, so we will get cracking. Please can you speak in your mind when you speak in council folks to hear what you say. So it'd be great, and you'll have to pass it down and speak into your mind. And we move on to item 1, apology.
So we just have apologies from Councillor Mather from Kirklees today.
Yeah, while we answer apologies, I'll go back and say we would like to thank Councillor Zahar and Councillor Ibrahim, who used to be in the committee, but they'll be no longer in the committee. And we have replaced Councillor Aiden from Bradford. Welcome to the committee, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And the new one is new too, so we are all learning, so we learn every day. Okay, so welcome. And Councillor Mother is to join us at some point. I hope she'll be at the next meeting very soon from her to the team. And we move on to, no, we didn't do it actually. A couple of days ago I was in Longfield, I'm falling into sleep, so that's it. I'm Councillor Taylor, and I'm the chair of the board, so I'll start this way around.
Morning everyone, I'm Councillor Nicole Sharp and I'm from Leeds City Council.
Councillor Usmanali, Director of Council and also Deputy Chair of the Spal.
Also Councillor for the Bradford District.
Neil Buckley, Councillor for Woodley in Leeds.
Jo Sykes, I'm an independent member on the panel.
Councillor Robert Thorber, I'm one councillors at Colville Council.
Councillor Chris Hayden from Bradford Council.
Julie Reid, Head of Police and Crime at the Horizontal Director of Policing and Crime and Police at the Command Post.
Alison Lowe, Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime in West Yorkshire. Wendy Stevens, Research and Performance Manager.
I'm Karen Gray, I'm the Casework and Reviews Manager in the Policing and Crime team.
Councillor Anthony Smith from Winley and Kirklees.
Trevor Lake, Independent Member.
Councillor Anne Kingstone, Councillor for Skirkett Ward in Halifax, Oldale.
Councillor Sulie Richards from Newson Ward, Kirklees. Councillor Jack Ferguson, Wakefield Councillor, my ward is Airedale, Newcastle.
Councillor Hassan Khan from Bradford Council.
Sharon Fraser from Wakefield Council, Legal Advisor to the panel.
Fiona Bernardo, Partnership Support Officer.
Thank you, and welcome, and also welcome to our guests that sit in the chamber that join us today. Thank you to be here. I know we'll get there. Okay, and let's start again. Apologies.
Just have apologies from Councillor Mather today.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, proof current of the minutes on the 14th of July. I think all members who were present have read the minutes. If anyone have anything that they would like to highlight, if not, could you please approve? Item 3, I've got no urgent minutes. Item 2 to the minutes today, so we'll go on to item 4, member declaration of interest. Does anyone have any interest? No? Item 5, we go straight on to item 5, performance and monitoring. Straight up.
Yeah, thank you. This performance monitoring report refers to the first quarter of this year, April to June 2023, and obviously it gives an update on the performance measures that are contained in the police and crime plan. I would ask you to look at the decrease in victim satisfaction slowing, which is a good thing, but also the victims of domestic abuse and stalking have a higher satisfaction rate, which is something we're really pleased about, and doing a bit of work with West Yorkshire Police to understand why. Some good performance, but also some not so good performance. I'm sure you could ask me lots of questions, so I'll just stop there and allow you to do so.
Okay. So we'll get Christine now, listen. So we will start with Councillor Sullivan. I told you to leave it on.
No. Well, first of all, thank yous for the gap in satisfaction declining between different ethnic minorities, and also well done to Bradford and Calderdale, is it, for getting the figures going in the right direction. What can the commanders of the districts where the figures are going in the wrong direction, what sort of strategies can be identified to reverse the decline?
Thank you for that question. I've visited Bradford and Calderdale commanders who are rightly pleased about their performance, and particularly Calderdale, I think, has got the best performance in the force, and actually along a range of metrics, so Calderdale will be proud of Calderdale's performance. And there are some internal, there's some opportunities for internal learning there, which we're encouraging West Yorkshire Police to identify all the time. Sometimes they operate in silos, and even though there are lots of opportunities for them to meet as a team of commanders, district commanders on a regular basis, can have been to a couple of those meetings, I don't think that some of the learning is always shared in the way it could be, and so we will remind West Yorkshire Police to keep on doing that. I think that one of the key problems is communication. So I think that in Calderdale and Bradford, clearly communication is better. People are being kept updated about the status of investigations into crimes. I think there's some great engagement. I was in Bradford East last week, some fantastic work on chop shops. I've been listening to the public, responded, raided a load of garages, found hundreds and hundreds of pieces of different cars, some of which will now be returned to their owners. Some great stuff going on. I think that the communication back to the public is key. It's something that the Chief Constable has talked about many times. And then also I think that Leeds is such a big area. We've had a lot of work around knife crime in Leeds and in Kirklees, and I think maybe some of the focus has come off that neighbourhood engagement, and so we need to remember all the time that if you're going to be addressing these big issues such as knife crime, community intelligence, relationship with the police is key to getting to the source and to providing the best responses. So we just need to keep reminding people that as busy as you get, it's always important to do that work. And Wendy, who's the queen of data, will also add.
There is a link between your first comment about the gap between white and ethnic minorities and the increases in Calderdale, particularly because the police did some work looking at victim satisfaction and what would increase it, and one of those was the feedback to people, and it was ethnic minorities that really, that was their main thing that they wanted. Calderdale and then Bradford as well have done this project looking at trying to make sure people are informed as often as possible about their crimes, and you can see from the results that it's working, so that's what's being rolled out, but there is a link between the two also.
Thank you. Good job.
Thanks, Chair. My question's in relation to early guilty pleas. It's good to hear that the increase in early guilty pleas. Do you know why this increase is occurring?
Actually we do, and I'll let Wendy come in and talk about that in a minute, because we had a conversation about it only last week. But just to say that as chair of the Local Criminal Justice Board, our job is to facilitate a system where we prevent people going into court, into the criminal justice system at the earliest opportunity. You might know that I'm on a new commission that the Labour Party set up, first meeting next week. It's looking at outcome rates, looking at charging, and early guilty pleas is one of the golden threads that I will be impressing upon the commission. It's something that we need to work really hard on. because obviously if we can get people to plead guilty at the very, very earliest juncture, not only is that good for the victim, it's really good for the system because it's not then clogging up that system. One of the reasons is because there's been some guidance about having, what are these offices called?
Police support officers.
So they're coming into a different stage of the prison processes, and it's been really successful. And Wendy will tell you the detail.
So there's two court proceedings. There's what they call GAP and NGAP. GAP is guilty anticipated plea. So if they feel like somebody is going to plead guilty, they'll go into a certain court. There's one they try and keep going with that court. Then NGAP is not guilty anticipated plea. So we talk about GAP and NGAP. So GAP is the guilty anticipated plea, which is what this is about. So under the guidelines from the government, these police support officers are put into the NGAP courts to help the trials, to bring down the trial times. But what we were finding was that people, especially in Bradford, magistrates were expecting them to plead guilty, and they weren't pleading guilty. So they did a project where they looked at taking the police, because there's only a finite number of these people, taking them from the NGAP into the guilty plea court and working there to see what would happen. And as we've found, the guilty plea rate has gone up. And so this is something now that's being looked at as whether we can roll it out, but it does go against transforming summary justice, which is the government guidelines for the court. So it's something that has to be agreed by all, but we can do it. It is in our gift to do, but we have to give that real good reason why. So I think the final decision on it will come to the next local criminal justice board.
Yeah, and I'm going to be raising it at the charging commission because I think we should roll it out nationally if it's working. Obviously, give it a bit more time to test out the theory, but if it's working, then how many people does that prevent going into the criminal justice system and clogging up those codes?
Can I just ask a couple of follow-up questions? So, is there an indication of the difference in time between something like that and that in terms of processing? And can you give me the broad strokes around what some of the interventions are in the offices that are printed on threads?
Do you want me to? Yes, please. Shall I carry on? Yeah. So by getting a guilty plea, what we're finding is that in the not guilty plea area, when you're looking at having a trial, that sort of thing, there's about 3 or 4 postponements of the case where they go through the different parts of the trial. So the difference is in the GAP court, they're specially set up so they can deal with that case there and then. It might have to be postponed for a sentencing hearing, but that's something that's out of the court system then, so it doesn't hold up court time. Months. We're talking months, by dealing with it. And also remember, the courts are still suffering from the backlogs from the pandemic, so it really helps to get these, through when obviously. The police obviously think that, that it should be a guilty plea based on the evidence. The problem comes when in court, at the guilty plea court, some of the evidence with the police there, they are able, if there's a question come back to the prosecutors that they're not sure about, the police have access straight through to the police systems, so they can go on. So it could be something as simple as, has the forensics come back, or has this person done their statement, and they can check live in court what's happening on the actual system and let the prosecutor know, so that then, because sometimes they'll plead not guilty just because one thing hasn't been on the file, whereas it might have just got stuck in the system or something. So that's what's changing. It's not that it's not a big change. It's just making the process easier. Exactly. As you can imagine, they're trying to deal with these, and all of them are online. So you can imagine that, you know, there are these glitches sometimes, but having somebody with direct access to the police systems in the court, really, it does seem to make a difference.
Okay. Councillor Kingston.
Thank you very much. I've got questions about the sexual crimes on page 9. The tables, obviously, table at the top of page 9, and then the table at the bottom of page 9. On both those tables, Calderdale shows a significant increase in the numbers of recorded rape offences and the number of recorded serious sexual offences, and that compares unfavourably with other areas of West Yorkshire, significantly unfavourably. It's been explained as increased reporting of crime rather than possibly an increased actual number of crimes, that you believe it's possibly just that there's an increase in reporting in Calderdale. And I wondered, why do you think that there's been an increased rate of reporting in Calderdale? Is there something that's feeding that increased rate of reporting that's creating that situation?
Well, I hope Tracy and I are thinking it. I hope Tracy and I, talking about our own lived experience, giving women permission to demand justice. I'm hoping that that is increasing confidence amongst women and other victims, because, as we know, rape and sexual offences affect all of us. We're hoping that more people are feeling safe to report. Actually, we talked about this data very recently with the police. I think we had our governance meeting last week. Another factor is that historical rapes and serious sexual assaults are also a constant for the police. So a third of all cases at any one time are historical offences. So that is also a factor that people might not be reporting. It's not just about reporting rapes that have happened recently. It's also about people feeling confident to come forward about historical cases, which I think is a really, really good thing. And I'd love to see that dropping, because the numbers have reduced, but unfortunately I don't expect that to be the case.
And can you explain why specifically Calderdale is showing such a significant difference compared to other West Yorkshire authorities? I can see that what you and Tracy have been doing would increase reporting across West Yorkshire generally, but I'm looking for an explanation about Calderdale. Why is there such a dramatic increase in Calderdale?
What we find with rape offences is that they tend to go up and down because you have what you have, and we were talking to the Chief Constable about this, we have young people who are coming into adulthood who realise what happened to them when they were younger shouldn't have happened and come forward. Now, the police are quite clear that they were expecting, they did a big work on this, as we all know, a few years ago, and we've talked to the panel about this. And they were expecting those numbers to die down, but what they hadn't thought about was those coming into adulthood going forward. So what we find is that places like Calderdale, they'll do somebody will come forward with historic offences for quite a few rapes, and what they'll do is they'll investigate them all as an operation, and then they'll charge them all at the same time. So you suddenly get these little spikes, and this is what we're seeing in Calderdale, just a spike. But I would expect the next time you'll see Calderdale less than others, because they won't have that spike that others are having. So yes, it is about more reporting, more confidence, but also these spikes can happen also.
Thank you. And then the national comparisons, that on a national level we're not doing as well as other authorities in the table. I just wondered, does increased reporting really explain the poor national comparison? Is that truly the explanation?
Well, that's what West Yorkshire Police say to you and to us. We are outstanding CDI, and other forces still, after all these years, are not as uniformly good at reporting everything, and what West Yorkshire do is they do record every instance as Wendy's just described. If someone comes and reports several incidents, they will record each incident as a rape, and so that definitely is something to consider. The fact that I hope victims feel more confident here in West Yorkshire to report, but it's highly likely that we've got more rapes here in West Yorkshire than we have, say, in Greater Manchester or West Midlands. Very similar demographics, very similar issues. I think it's highly likely that we've got disproportionately more. I think we've probably got the same amount of problem and challenge, but I do think CDI and confidence to report are contributors to our numbers.
So if you look at the national table, we used to be top of that table with our percentage increase. We are now middle because places like West Midlands, Greater Manchester are now taking CDI. West Midlands at their last inspection were given inadequate for crime data integrity, so all of a sudden they've jumped to the top of the table by the percentage increase. But the crimes themselves, you know, I think we do have that increased number in West Yorkshire because of the mayor and the deputy mayor promoting this and people feeling confident. But there is that balance as well, and this is why police figures are not national statistics, because there's still this imbalance between police forces and the way that they record crimes.
And we do have the second highest charge rate for rape in the country. So that's the other thing to take into account. It's not good enough. 8.2% I think it is now. It's not good enough by a long shot, but it is better than our most similar group.
Councillor Smith, is your question tying on to this?
It is.
Okay, I'll let you go.
Thank you very much indeed. You kind of just answered the question, really. The point I was going to make is that it's a welcome increase by 0.7% to 8.2% for Pencombs. I think you just clarified what the welcome is, and that is a charge.
It's a charge or a summons?
Yeah, charge, summons, community resolution. So it's anything with a positive criminal justice outcome. Yeah. So it's not those where, you know, they've got a suspect and offender, but they haven't been able to take them to court, that sort of thing. Yeah. So it talks about in here outcome rate, 1 to 8. So these are the top 8 outcomes which have a criminal justice finalisation to them. But it could be a community resolution, could be caution. But for rapes, it's mostly charges, we have to say.
Could we get a fact sheet for the meeting on that?
Yeah, it's under the investigations paper that came earlier in the year.
I think it came down.
Yeah, and it breaks it down. So, but happy to send you something, or we can talk about it when we have a meeting.
Yeah, that's fine. So that still leaves almost 92% of rapes with a positive outcome. Just give us a little bit of context around reasons for that, what we're doing.
So this is why I'm on this commission next week, because we need to understand what's happening, we need to get to the bottom of it, and we need to put tactics and strategies in place to overturn that, what is a scandalous situation. The vast majority of reasons why people don't get justice is because the victim withdraws, and the victim withdraws for all sorts of reasons. I think the fact that it can take up to 4 years to get a resolution to rape is one of the biggest reasons. I think the fact that obviously victims of rape, there can be all sorts of reasons why they're, you know, talked out of it, or the mental health crisis that they endure as a result of the length of time. Historically, we know that removing people's mobile phones was an issue, even though that sounds really silly. People could lose their mobile phones for months and months and months, and that's all your contacts, that's your support network that you need most of all at that time, all your photographs, your videos, things that are going to give you comfort in that moment. That's why here in West Yorkshire they can now turn around the downloading of a mobile phone in 24 hours, and they can do it in the victim's home. That's a piece of work that they've been working on really successfully. But there are many reasons it can be decisions that are taken by various bits of the system. So investigating a rape, you could be 2 years before you go into CPS. And CPS can be months and months and months before they say yes. They could say they've got to come back to you in 28 days, but that could be you need to give us more information, or we need this, or we need that. So everything just is delay. You know, there might be plea deals done, there might be any number of reasons, and obviously in some cases the perpetrator is never identified. That's another reason why cases don't come to court. So we need to understand what the issues are, we need to understand it empirically rather than anecdotally, and then hopefully by looking at evidence of what works, we can start to address some of these issues. And if we can stop cases going to court, all cases clogging up the system going to court, then we can prioritise rape and serious sexual violence cases, and they can get them through really quickly, bearing in mind investigations take a very, very long time for a very good reason, because you know, it's got to be fair to both sides. But we can get the courts able to see these through as quickly as possible by taking out the detritus that doesn't need to be there, then we might see more people getting justice.
And a final question. Could you give me some deeper understanding as to what statistics we are capturing? So you just said, for example, that you know there are necessarily in lots of cases a big delay in the process for evidence gathering, whatever else it may be. With these statistics, is the outcome rate linked to a specific crime, or are you measuring the actual number of reported crimes and the actual number of outcomes and correlating those two things? Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, but Wendy does.
So the simple answer is yes. So we're looking at the outcomes just for recorded rape offences. So what we have is, it comes to the panel as an overview of all crime, but we have that broken down for all the different offences. And there's 22 outcomes. So the 1 to 8 are the ones with the positive criminal justice, as we've mentioned. But there are a number of others for different reasons. And by looking, that's the sort of evidence
15 and 16 are the ones that talk about
15 and 16 are when one is when the suspect is identified but the victim doesn't want to proceed. And 16 is when there's a suspect identified, a victim identified, but the case doesn't, but there isn't, the evidence isn't there. So it's, but these sort of outcomes, they're quite specific for that reason, so that we can understand for each of the different crime types what the outcomes are, and then you can look at solutions going forward for that. It's just at the moment there's a disjoint, isn't there? Because the criminal justice system is clogged up with the backlog from the pandemic and all the other reasons we know about with the strikes, that sort of thing. So, and that has a back effect, as Alison has said, to the police, and that's what we're trying to work through as part of.
And I should just say that locally, so I chair the local criminal justice board. But we've got subcommittees of that, and one of them is the Efficiency and Effectiveness Subcommittee, and they're doing an end-to-end review of rape cases. So they're looking, I don't know if it's all rape cases, Simon's not here to tell me, but they're looking at a series of rape cases and understanding exactly what happens, what is something abandoned by the police, is something refused to be charged by CPS. Is there another reason why the system is not giving justice to that person? And so it's a huge enterprise. We're looking at things like special measures. Are we using them effectively? Is the judge saying no to special measures? So if a victim wants to give evidence via a court link, for example, or pre-record under the Section 28 stuff, and the judge says no, that could be a reason why the case falters, because the victim then refuses to give evidence. It could be that there's no screen in court, so the victim doesn't want to give evidence. So we're trying to understand every single step of that journey for the victim, but also how the court is supporting or not supporting the victim through that journey. And then we'll come to a really good understanding of what point things are going wrong. And once we've got that analysis, We're really happy to come back with a high level, because I'm expecting to be quite detailed, but a high level précis of what we found and what we're going to be doing differently. But I also think that nationally there are probably some legislative changes that need to be made, process changes, you know, so the transforming justice, some injustice stuff that Wendy mentioned. You know, we're going against the guidance, and yet it's giving us some good outcomes. So we need to really shake up the whole system to understand what works and what doesn't work.
If I may, just very briefly, I don't want to labour the point. I'm just want to be clear that I'm understanding this. So, are we saying that with this outcome rate of 8.2%, that 91.8% of those cases will never receive an outcome?
We can't say never, because it might be that the case will be opened, it might be more evidence.
Effectively, at this point in time,
yeah,
they're not going to.
Yeah, it's a national scandal. Yeah,
Yes.
but we are the best, one of the best performers, second highest in the country. So I think the Met is slightly better, because obviously it's a much bigger force, much bigger numbers. I think it's amazing, isn't it? But yeah, it's a scandal.
Yeah. Finish.
Thank you.
Lovely.
I do have one question.
No more. Councillor Lane.
Thanks, Chair. It's a follow-up really on the, first of all, on the micro, congratulations and well done on the improvement across the increased victims and causes from the ethnic groups, getting that gap down. That's really good.
First time in a
That's been there for a long time, and never moved, so well done. That's really good. And also for the continually high level of satisfaction for victims of domestic abuse, 83%. That's a really good result, and there lots of work gone into that. I just wanted to go back up the page to the macro level. This is a dangerous sort of to do really well, we're on target here. If we look back 2019, we're still below, some 3% below victim satisfaction back in 2019. And even with the satisfaction from victims of domestic abuse, still below that figure then. So my question is, are you confident with your plans and strategies to improve this performance? And do you think you'll get it back to the 2019? And if so, when do you see that happening?
So obviously since 2019 we've had Wayne Cousins, David Kelly, and then actually I think that the floodgates have opened, and many more police officers have ended up in court in very high profile cases that we've seen locally here in West Yorkshire, but also nationally. I think there was a case a couple of days ago of a police officer being a rapist again. So there are many examples recently since 2019 of police officers in positions of power who should never have been. So we're going to have a paper a bit later on where we're going to talk about that a bit more. And I think that has been a major blow. Is it a fatal blow? Well, time will tell. And I think for many people there's been a massive dent in the trust and confidence in policing. And I think it's going to take a long time to recover that position, if ever, because what is going to determine whether there's an improvement is the response of the police. And here in West Yorkshire, we'll talk later on about what we're doing in West Yorkshire. I'll give you a brief update on the response to Casey and hopefully give you some reassurance. But you're only as strong as your weakest link, as I constantly say, and we don't know what we don't know. And there may well be police officers here in West Yorkshire who will turn out to be David Kelly Mark II or Wayne Cousins Mark II. We pray to God that is not the case, but we'd be foolish to think that it's impossible. And should that happen, then I think confidence will plummet even further and maybe stay there forever. So what we need to be doing is working with the police to be open and transparent, to be constantly reviewing their processes, to reflect on their responses to abuse of position of sexual purpose, for example, and other criminality within the force in a way that reflects the wishes and needs of the public that they're here to serve. There's been a lot of defensiveness, there's been a lot of protecting the officers that they should not be protecting, and that's nationally. I'm not talking necessarily about West Yorkshire in that. I think there's some really good evidence that West Yorkshire has acted well globally. There will be individual cases that emerge, I'm sure, in time where you question the decision making of individuals. But I think that The National Police Chiefs Council have now got their Violence Against Women and Girls strategy. They're rolling out the Police Race Action Plan, which I am on the board of, and they're recognising that they have got a lot of convincing to do, a lot of changing to do. I do worry that there is pressure coming nationally, so I was going to mention under my any other business bit the letter from Suella Braverman requesting the inspection by HMIC into police impartiality, membership of staff networks, for example, taking the knee, wearing pride laces, attending pride, all those sorts of things, which I think will will not serve policing as she wishes. I think that we've got a conflict between what needs to happen with our communities and what government thinks needs to happen with our communities. So who knows? We can only do what we think is right and best, and Tracy and I are holding the police to account here, asking the questions that we hope the people of West Yorkshire want us to ask. But we don't know what we don't know, and that's why triangulation is so critical. And if you know anything, the public knows anything, then we urge you, we beg you to tell us, so that we can then reflect that back to West Yorkshire Police and get the changes that we all need and want to see.
Yeah, thanks very much. That's some very detailed answers to the questions. There's simple questions in that. I think what you're telling us is that we're probably not going to get back to those levels pre-2019 because of what you just explained. But I think it's important that we are careful that we don't accept a declining performance. And somehow we've got to put a stake in the ground. So we know there might be a 3 or 4%, whatever we work it out, we've done some statistics, and therefore our new target is this, and that's what we're aiming for.
And I think there are other measures of success and satisfaction. So, for example, the crime survey of England and Wales, here in West Yorkshire, just over 1% of the public feel, worried about crime in public, about personal crime, which is and that's the lowest in the country. So, actually, the reality is that people feel relatively safe here in West Yorkshire, and that is because we've got an effective police force, generally speaking. So there are other measures of success that we don't want to lose, but we also don't want to forget that trust and confidence as a result of individuals and systems and processes and institutional practices, can't forget them, because if we do so at a great cost to ourselves.
Okay.
Thank you. At the top of page 24, there's a table which, and the first item on the table is domestic burglaries, and the number of them, 18,493. And we've been used to the police giving crime numbers out, 90% of cases. And I just wonder whether the Deputy Mayor was happy with the strategy for burglaries now, and is it going to change in view of what's been said recently?
Yeah, so here in West Yorkshire, as the Chief Constable's already said, an officer goes out to every burglary, which is good news, and it's something that should happen everywhere and is now happening everywhere. Burglary is devastating for the victim. I've been burgled twice, once on Christmas Eve. It is horrendous, and I don't wish it on the worst enemy, and West Yorkshire Police and all forces must act to support victims of burglary, must visit, must give that reassurance, offer support around like hardening, all the rest of it, because it's such a personal crime and it has such a devastating impact, and in fact some people don't ever want to go home as a result of what's happened to them. But I think it's also right that burglary has been going down, substantially has been going down, and we need to focus on the strategies that the West Yorkshire Police have employed to maintain that downward trend. So I'll give you an example that I used before, but I don't think you were here, which is BD3 Unite. So the police use a process called Clear, Hold, Build to rid communities of serious and organised crime, and burglary can be part of serious and organised crime activity. So BD3 Unite in 2021, police came together with local people, local agencies, services, the church, etc. As a result of criminal burglaries that are taking place in BD3. There were over 850 burglaries in the previous year, and as a result of all the work that they did to clear the criminal elements, hold that community and prevent other people entering that space, and then building the community up with partners, so doing the sustainability. The number of burglaries the following years was 0. And it's been mentioned in HMIC's review into neighbourhood crime. BD3 Unite was actually mentioned as evidence of great practice. Lots of bosses now visitors here in West Yorkshire to understand what we did. And we're rolling it out across other parts of West Yorkshire, most latterly in Hare Hills. And that's around about drugs. It's not just about burglary, they use it for all sorts of different initiatives. So I think that West Yorkshire Police do have the wherewithal, the knowledge, the skills, the tactics, the strategies to deal with burglary as evidenced by BD3. But also different areas, you need a different response depending on where the threat is coming from and what's driving that threat. Is it drugs? Is it something else? So that intelligence that the police have is really crucial to understanding what the response should be.
Councillor, you want to ask a question?
No, okay,
Councillor Ferguson?
no.
So, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Just staying on the same page, in relation to the increase in car thefts, do you know what work is ongoing to bring those numbers down?
Oh yeah, so this is the one area where actually the performance is not going in the right direction, which we talked about last week with West Yorkshire Police. So I think it's really important for us to keep that focus on the police and they're aware of it. The issue is, so I talked about being in Bradford East last week where they did all the chop shop burglaries, you know, where they were recovering lots of cars. The majority of those cars were keyless. And so manufacturers are a major part to play in this. Not only did they find bits of cars, whole cars, motorbikes and drugs on the raid that I attended last week, they also found a device to prevent stolen cars being tracked. So there's a tracker thing that they can disrupt, so you can buy it off the internet for 15 quid, they said. They found the laptop that they use to be able to access your car when it's keyless. They don't need to get it from you. You know, they don't need to be able to do it when it's in your top drawer. They can do it that way, but they can also remotely access it with a laptop with some special software, which they can get for about 200 quid off the internet. So the hundreds of car parts and cars that were found in Bradford last week, which is part of the series of organised crime group, obviously, they were 95% keyless cars. And that's part of the contributing factor to the fact that West Yorkshire Police are losing this battle. But it's not just a response from the police. They did some great work last week recovering vehicles and putting some people into the system, and hopefully there will be some good outcomes there. But ultimately, unless we can work effectively with manufacturers, then unfortunately this will always prove a sticking point.
Yes, I'm concerned with the rise in killed and seriously injured on our roads. And I'm wondering how much engagement there is in the relatively new partnership of the Vision Zero board. Are we likely to see, is there not enough partnership? That's why they're going up. And are we likely to see more engagement? And they're likely to go down? Or is it something entirely different?
Well, no, it's linked. I mean, obviously, engagement of the public, engagement of partners, engagement of all key players in reducing deaths and serious injury, and hopefully by 2040 eliminating them, which is our obsession at the moment. It can't be done by one agency because so many things rely on that partnership approach. You know, road design, car design, a whole range of factors will help us to get there. We are seeing a slight decline in case size. So in March, when I chaired the board meeting, we'd had 10 deaths in the previous quarter. and in June we had 9 deaths in the previous quarter. The quarter before that there was over 20, 23 I think. We're starting to see a slight decline, but you know, is that by design or is that accidental? We don't know. We want to keep that pressure on those numbers, but it's all of us working together. The good thing about Vision Zero is that it's bringing together all West Yorkshire and the West Yorkshire Safety Camera Partnership to think as one rather than in different units doing their own thing. We're bringing together the resources, the evolution and the mayor bring. So we've got some considerable funding under CRF STS, which is contributing to funding some of the design, the works that we need to see across our roads, funding, pelican crossings, cameras, all sorts of infrastructure that we need to see in place. And that's a 5-year programme, and I say brought in by the mayor through the devolution deal. We're working really effectively with the politicians in a way that we haven't before, because Leeds works for Leeds, Bradford works for Bradford. There's nothing wrong with that, but we also have to understand that boundaries cross over, cars and criminal behaviour cross these boundaries, and we need to all be working together. So that is happening now, and then finally, one of the great successes that we've already been able to achieve is convincing the West Yorkshire Camera Safety Partnership that their really single focus on deaths being the trigger for action is not helpful, and that they need to listen to councillors, they need to listen to local people. And I think Councillor Amanda Carter was really vocal about this, and I heard her and I took that back into those meetings with me and said we need to listen to local councillors who speak on behalf of their communities. And so they've come up with this thing called community concerns. So communities now can raise concerns about dangerous roads, where there might not have been a serious accident, thank God, but could be. And then what we're doing now is we're building the infrastructure on each of the local authority websites. The local authorities themselves are doing that, but under our, with our support. And then we're going to hopefully have a protocol in each local authority which is about how to raise a community concern. Then we're going to raise those directly with the Camera Safety Partnership. They've got new funding to purchase some mobile speed cameras, which they will then use to do blitzes in those areas of concern. But also, they've got some investment to bring in some average speed cameras. And obviously, there are lots and lots of dangerous roads that will meet the criteria for average speed cameras, which will get them as a result of these concerns being raised, which previously would only happen if there had been a death there. So I think that they're listening. I think people are recognising that the public know what the public know, we should be listening to them. And I also think that if we all work together, and that includes manufacturers, we'll start to see some of these behaviours changing, but the fatal five remain the same. Speeding, using your mobile phone, lack of care and attention, not wearing your seatbelt. I think West Yorkshire Police did an operation over the summer, 50 people in a week not wearing a seatbelt. It's shocking. I've never not worn a seatbelt. And then drugs and alcohol. We could talk about NOx, but they didn't have those all the time. Lots and lots of factors that drivers need to be taking personal responsibility for, and we've got a role to play there. We have now got a communications group where we're going to start rolling out some really positive messaging, communications, challenges to the public about their behaviours, and we're hoping that together we'll get to a place where we're all comfortable, which is 0 deaths and serious injury.
Well, that's excellent news. It's funny you should mention the phones. I was following someone this morning on my epic journey to get here, and it was literally halfway around the circular road there, and I had to toot him a couple of times when the lights changed and stuff like that. Just on and on and on.
They take the registration. I mean, we've got dash cam. That's another way that we can be part of the solution, because obviously we've got the portal that you can upload your dash cam, and bigger and bigger proportions of those cases are ending up in court and people are being prosecuted. So the public can be part of the solution if you've got a dash cam. But you can also just take the registration number, which I've done a couple of times, and people have had visits from the police that they didn't expect.
I drive a rather humble little motor, and it doesn't have all that technology. But thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if I'm loud enough to...
You have to pass it down.
Oh, that's all right.
It's just regarding item 3, reducing knife crimes. It's very welcome that the figures are dropping, but what's been done to sort of take these zombie knives as such out of circulation? I believe just this past week there were initiative from the police force down south to take these knives out, further knives out of circulation, but it's like I've probably asked the question before, the manufacture of these knives, because some of these knives aren't even used in the catering trade. So, are you able to elaborate what's...
I am, yeah. So, Ofgem Lock, which is the police response to knife crime, and is funded through the government's BRIC funding, but also works alongside our violence reduction unit. It was actually on the TV this morning when you saw it. Have taken out 1,700 knives since they were established in 2019. That is big knives, you know, the zombie knives and the machetes and all the rest of it. And we actually had a demonstration of all the knives that they took out. We had a
statue.
Yeah, we got the knife statue, which obviously was not all our knives, that was knives from around the UK. But we were in the museum, the Royal Armouries, and yeah, we had, I can't remember what it was called now, but something end. Anyway, it's now gone, but it was there for a year, so there was all the knives that had been taken by Ofgem Law were held in a case, and you could go and see some of these horrible weapons that had been held, and then there were various information about how many knives it picked up, but it's been gone now over just under a year, I think. So they're doing a brilliant job to rid the streets of West Yorkshire with knives. As you know, stop and search has gone up, and that is primarily about finding weapons and drugs, but primarily about weapons, and the find rate has gone up 20% for knives from Ofgem Lock in those 12 months, and so that's something positive. We did write to the government, so the Mayor did write to the government about 18 months ago about the issue with knives, because these huge zombie knives, machetes, who needs those? You know, we don't have sugarcane anymore, we don't need these things. So we wrote to the Minister at the time, I can't remember which one it was because they've all changed so many times, but in any event we wrote and asked them to look at the legislation, and very recently it was reported by government that they had listened to not just our treaties but also those of other organisations and police forces, and they're now going to criminalise these huge knives. They did have an opportunity to do so in 2016, but for some reason they just said you couldn't have aggressive words on them. But you could keep the knives, you just couldn't have these violent words on them. So of course they proliferated as a result. But the other thing that we've done proactively is there was a knife shop in West Yorkshire. I won't name it because there are proceedings ongoing, but I think it's been named before and it's been in the press. A knife shop that was selling considerable numbers of knives to young people who were then involved in criminality because they were feeding that back to the police. And there was no legislation to easily close down that business. I wrote to the local authority concerned because they were in a premises that belonged to that local authority, and I said please use all your efforts to remove that lease. And after some time the lease was ended, but also the police came up with some really innovative way by looking at the I think it was legislation going back about 100 years. They were able to find a bit of legislation to use to prosecute the owner of that shop. So we are really cognizant of the fact that there are too many knives out there, that we need to get them off the street, and there are many and varied ways to do that. We need to be dealing with the Amazons, etc. of this world, who, you know, if you're 18, you can have a knife, but you know, it can be your mum or your dad or your uncle or your friend who looks 18 who's got false documents that gets you that knife. So we need to be addressing the supply as well as the availability on the street.
Just a quick point, Jen. Can you elaborate on the ongoing work in schools? teach the children the consequences.
Life
Life consequences.
So even though West Yorkshire Police are not teachers and have no responsibility for going into schools and teaching young people, they do understand the role of prevention, and they do want to prevent young people coming into the criminal justice system, which is why they developed POLED nearly 3 years ago now. And when the Mayor and I first came into office, about 35 schools in West Yorkshire have signed up to POLED. There are 1,200 schools in West Yorkshire. Now, it's over 2/3 of schools, and have probably nearly 3/4 of schools gone into got POLED, and POLED covers a range of topics that affect young people, from hate crime, online harms, but also knife crime, carrying a knife. There's a lot of research that they are using, the ERP now have done around knife crime, which suggests that if you carry a knife, it's 3 times more likely to be harmed yourself. So all that information is fed into the information going into schools, and then the research that the ERP are doing is on our website, but we share it with all agencies working with young people who might be at risk of knife crime.
Thank you.
Alison, you talk about knives in shops. What about knives selling online? Again, work going around that.
Well, I don't think it's covered by the online harms bill, which it ought to be. But again, this is an issue for government. That they need to be making it much more difficult. I mean, when they brought in the legislation back in 2015-16, they did strengthen that legislation, but it's still not working because people are very versatile and they know how to get around that. So we need to be putting pressure on suppliers. There should be no zombie knives made. They shouldn't be made. There should be no machetes made. They shouldn't be manufactured at all because they have no purpose. And that's when we'll start to win, is when we prevent them not just getting into this country, into our communities, but we stop them being manufactured in the first place.
Yeah, that's what we need to work on, because if we can't get it here, we're doing it actions. Yeah. Thank you. Are there any councillors?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just want to raise a query, Alison, on 3.7. So it's very clear your commitment to increasing the proportion of the workforce. We spoke on BBC last year, this time last year. So I know you've got a personal commitment to that. It would be useful for us, I think, to see, we have had in the past an analysis of the senior level of management in the force and the breakdown of ethnicity amongst that. That would be quite helpful if that was available, to see that, so that we get an understanding of how that's going to work through, particularly 2 levels below the command team, how that might work through in the future, the representation.
Yeah, definitely we'll get that for you.
Okay, thank you. Quick one. Finishing off with this one.
We'll finish it off item 5.
Well, is that an item 5?
I've just...
If it's a quick one.
Well, I've got a couple of questions on item 5.
Quick ones.
Okay. So, page 8 in respect of correspondence time to 999 call answered from so 1.2.2. I think everybody would agree that 10 seconds means you have not more time to wait, and you might not have that time if you are picking something down the 999, particularly in cases of domestic abuse. One of the things I'd like to understand is what causes a call to be transferred from BT? Is that because, for example, the 999 service is busy and they prefer to be taken to people coming from different routes? So, that being the case, those referrals being included in this stack, does that provide us with actionable information that the force can use? They don't need to be separated out?
So, what we're talking about, the transfer time, so the call goes to BT, a 999 call goes to BT. They decide where it needs to go, whether that's ambulance, police, fire brigade, and which area, and then it gets transferred to the police. So in this 10 seconds is that transfer from BT. Now, for some areas, that can be up to 6 seconds it takes but we don't have that information. All we have is when the police, so you can't separate it out. They have been looking at it nationally and trying to get this, but for us, we can't separate out the difference between when it goes to BT and when it comes to us. But there has been a few problems recently. I don't know.
A couple of weeks back, wasn't it? BT had a major issue, and 999 calls were affected by that.
Yeah.
What's our aspirational target?
Zero.
Yeah, well, it's 100% obviously, isn't it? But
Yeah, it's not possible because 999 is a national service,
Right.
so the host is BT.
Yeah. Have we got any concerns going down the line with switch from analog to digital? Is that, have we?
I mean, we've not heard of any, but
No,
we could ask that. We could definitely ask that question.
No.
When you'll let that go to put into our governance meeting.
And a final one, it's probably a technical one. Page 21, item 5. So we've got this little table at the top, which gives us reports the crimes per million. So all those 4 columns, are they all reported in crimes per million? Because if they are, then I'll have a question for Greater Manchester and West Midlands, and we can have a higher number of drugs involved than crimes per million.
So what this is talking about is the first column is per year per million, and then the second, the female victim, drugs involved, alcohol involved, is a ratio of the actual number of crimes, not per million. It's a ratio, yeah.
She's a statistician.
Yeah, okay.
That's why I'm there to answer those questions.
Sorry.
Perhaps I just need to clarify.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I will. Yes, I can see I've put it across the top, haven't I? Crimes per million, but yeah, it was just per year per million.
I knew that was exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's me.
Thank you.
My
Lovely, thank you very much. Is there any other question, quick question? No? Okay, we move on now to item 6, complaints.
So this report is in 2 parts. So
Yes.
it's all the paper that we have to give you every year that Karen writes about the number of reviews that she's doing and how many are upheld, etc. And then the second part is a shortened version of the PSD report that we received, that basically I received from West Yorkshire Police on a very, very regular basis. And it looks at current disciplinary and other cases that have been complained about. So really have to answer the questions, but I'm going to allow Karen just to do a short introduction to her paper.
The microphone.
Is it on?
Yeah. So this time round, I provided quite a lot of information to you in our report because I wanted to show some of the trends that we've now seen. I mean, this responsibility came in on the 1st of February 2020, so we've not had that many years worth of data. So we've now got 3 full years of data, so I just wanted to show you that. And you can see, I mean, the highlights for me are the fact that the number of review requests that we're receiving is going up year on year. The other bit, and the reason I provided the Q1 figures was to show you that actually for the past few years we've had an upheld rate of about 20%, but West Yorkshire Police has done some work since the beginning of the year on trying to improve the responses that have gone to complainants, and that seems to have shown up in the number of reviews that we've upheld. I would just advise some caution because it's Q1, there's obviously 3 quarters of the year left, and that figure may not be quite so low by the end of the year, but actually it shows that West Yorkshire Police are moving in the right direction with the responses that were being provided to complainants. I think the rest of the figures for me just sort of show much of a muchness really, similar sort of levels throughout those. The only other thing to maybe draw attention to is the number of working days to complete a review. We also see a quarterly report from the Independent Office for Police Conduct, and 13 days is a lot better than certainly our most similar family, and also a national figure. So I'm quite proud that we can achieve a review within those timescales. We tell people 20, and that's because there's fluctuating numbers of review requests come in. Sometimes there's a deluge and sometimes there's not. So we quote 20 days. We're achieving 6 at the moment. I hate to use the Q word for quiet, but you know, it does mean we can achieve them in a lot less than 20. But because of the fluctuations and because of things like annual leave and that sort of thing, we try and sort of state at that sort of level really. But 13 is our average at the moment, and it's coming down. So happy to answer any questions.
We just before we go into question, we'll question what's in front of us. But during our pre-meeting, we're having a private meeting next month. What date is it again? Next month, 6th of October. We was wondering if you could come and have a discussion on this item in the private meeting, or if you can't make it and attend, could we arrange an online meeting, members where we could access them?
Absolutely, yes.
Is that okay? Yes. So could you please get in touch with the office if you can come to the private meeting? If not, we'll arrange an hour or so meeting with you to discuss.
No, that's absolutely fine.
Is that okay?
I don't know if I can come, but if I can, I will.
Yeah, so we will just...
Yeah, we'll get somebody else on the team.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, Jan. I think what we talked about in the private meeting might not relate to Karen's bit, or I may have misunderstood it. I thought we were going to ask Alison about some
the
feedback
PSD
on the Baroness Casey.
All right, yeah. Well, I've got some notes here.
Depending upon your response, to ask whether there might be a need for a further meeting in private around that.
Oh yeah, very happy to come.
I'm not sure I got that right, have I?
Yeah, so you'll come soon.
I can't say I'm coming on the 6th of October.
No, but we can arrange
it. Claire is in charge of my diary. She's not here to tell me yes or no.
Yeah, we can arrange a
nothing
lot
without Claire's sanction.
Perhaps you can cover that now.
Yeah. So when Baroness Casey wrote her damning report into the events at Metropolitan Police, obviously, as with every national report that is produced, we ask for the implication for West Yorkshire, we ask what West Yorkshire is doing in response, and any risks or opportunities for learning, development, all those sorts of things. So we received a paper back from the head of PSD in response to our request, which outlined in lots of detail the issues facing the Metropolitan Police and some of the context that many of the challenges facing the Met obviously have been out beyond their control, austerity, changes in crime patterns, greater non-crime demand, societal shifts in that society is now less tolerant of certain crime types, and the expanding population are all contexts that they were keen for us to take on board, and that's fair. Violence against a person and sexual offences in the Met have increased from 17% of all crimes in 2012-13 to 31% in 22-3. Domestic abuse-related crimes have doubled in 10 years to nearly 100,000 a year. This was the context that West Yorkshire Police wanted us to understand, because obviously they are colleagues with the policing family, is close, and irrespective of the situation in the Met, the public needs to know that we're all fighting the same war. So the conclusions of Casey's report were that the Met had systemic and fundamental problems in how it was run. There was disjointed management, lack of clear goals and strategies, there were no workforce plans, poor recruitment and vetting, lack of PDRs. Only 13% of frontline officers had completed a PDR, for example. There was too much power and responsibility given to sergeants and inspectors because of the massive size of the force. They outsourced their HR, but also they had lost 21% of their staff and 2/3 of special constables. and the number of PCSOs had halved, which all having a contributory factor. Another outcome was that the Met had not managed the integrity of its own police service. Vetting systems had not been, there was some guidelines given about 10 years ago now, which the Met had not adopted. There were unclear ethical standards. They'd given poor clarity to officers about repercussions of malpractice, unethical practice, and there were no deterrents. Recording and acting upon complaints of misconduct to a PO, and there was no proactive understanding or action to identify patterns of behaviours, and then there were too lenient on serious misconduct. She also found that the Met's new leadership, although whilst representing a welcome change of tone, there was a deep-seated culture which needed to be tackled, and that it hadn't been tackled, which was evidenced by too much hubris and too little humility, defensiveness and denial, complainants not believed, widespread bullying, speaking up was not welcomed, they had an optimism bias, and there was poor management across the ranks. She also talked about bullying generally, homophobia, racism, misogyny and sexist culture, all of which she said were institutional. So that was the background that West Yorkshire Police wanted us to understand. And what they said in response is that they believe that their vision and strategy was clear, as evidenced by HMIC's outstanding rating. The statement that they produce every 3 years, their 3-year assessment of harm, threat and risk, again has been classed as outstanding because it really understands what those threats are and understands what resources are needed to put in place. They believe that they've got a clear purpose, which is communicated to all staff. They've got an internal HR function, which also incorporates their wider, is incorporated into their wider people directorate, which includes positive action, DEI, health and safety, health and wellbeing, learning and development. They felt that they'd already delivered best practice in relation to vetting, so when that approved practice was developed nearly 10 years ago, they had adopted it immediately. They have been inspected, so they've had an HMIC inspection. There was a thematic inspection, West Yorkshire were included in that. No issues were raised about West Yorkshire because they'd followed best practice. In terms of training, PDRs, their rate is high, completion is high, in the 90%. Accredited training is recorded, monitored, and they can evidence that through their systems. They don't have the units that the Met have got, such as the Parliamentary Diplomatic Protection Unit, and even though they do have a firearms team, that's within box support. Safeguarding is part of all districts, so it's something that is part of the activity of all the districts across West Yorkshire. VOG, so West Yorkshire are an exemplar force, are seen so by the National Police Chiefs Council in any event, and I can talk about a lot of the work that we're holding them to account for around violence against women and girls, the focus that they're putting on that and some of the outcomes in relation to domestic abuse and stalking. We've already talked about the improvement in satisfaction. They've received a good rating by HMIC on National Vulnerability Action Planning, and they've got independent board scrutiny arrangements and independent leadership of those arrangements are in place. They have extensive training around domestic abuse, which was brought in this year by Safe Lives, which was the nationally accredited one. If you're a woman, you want it police to have Safe Lives, so they've now got it. They've got stalking training, they've got DEI training, 2-day DEI course is just being developed. I'm going to attend it, so I'll see how good it is. And also, they are very open about professional standards, so in July. I attended a session with 80 other partners where PSD not only were very open about the situation with ongoing gross misconduct cases that were happening in West Yorkshire, they gave detailed information to all the participants about what abusive position for sexual purpose looks like. They gave examples of where that happened in West Yorkshire. They gave routes to complain to those participants, so that it was really clear that they were encouraging partners to be part of the solution and saying we do not accept this behaviour. They've got independent ways of giving people a route into complaint, like the national whistleblowing line that they've got, for example. And the evidence of some of the work that they're doing internally on racism, not only have they adopted the Police Race Action Plan, they've got dedicated resources for the Police Race Action Plan, which I've got a lot to do with, and so has Wendy and the other people in the office, is that gross misconduct cases against black minority ethnic people equate to 7.3% of cases, and as we've just heard, we're about 8.6% for officers across West Yorkshire, so there's no disproportionality there. But there is disproportionality in misconduct cases. 19% of all cases were BME, and so we have raised that with West Yorkshire Police several times, and we're asking for work to be done at the districts at sergeant and inspector level about what gets referred up, because the majority of those have no case to answer. So the reality is that many of those people should never be referred into the system in the first place. So we understand what's happening in West Yorkshire, and we're acting to address it from the Mayor and my perspective in any event. Disproportionality is part of our PSD training. There's a video message from the chairs of the Black and the Muslim staff networks, which is played at every course. And as I say, there's independent scrutiny of those functions. PSD is set up as an independent specialist investigation function in West Yorkshire and deals with all criminal and misconduct allegations made by the public against police officers and staff. So elsewhere, I'm not saying that PSD is not West Yorkshire Police, of course it is, but they've tried to hermetically seal themselves from the rest of their colleagues by having a specialist investigation function, and they take on every case that's reported to them against their own officers, and they make sure that they have access to the whole of that person's files, all the history of that person. They will investigate it from beginning to end. It doesn't go to districts. It's not about allowing colleagues to investigate colleagues, and it's very rare that somebody who knows somebody would be allowed to investigate that case. So it's not impossible, but it's very, very rare, and there's particular reasons for that. All the investigators are PIP accredited, mainly PIP 2, but also 3, and they adopt all the approved practice around investigations and vetting, as I already said. So all board cases have been reviewed over the last 5 years, as was a requirement of the National Board Strategy, that you have to review them and see whether or not big, you've made mistakes, people have got away with stuff, as had happened, of course, with the murder of Sarah Everard. And of the 96 hearings held over the last 5 years, 76 people were dismissed, and 3 cases were not proven. The 14 that were left had final written warnings. Just explain that they were all led by LQC, so legally qualified chairs, so they were not led by the Chief Constable. And you might have heard in the last week or so that the government has been doing a review into dismissal processes, and they're just about to change. So LQCs will remain on panels, but will not chair panels. That will be the Chief Constable delegated to the command team, I presume. And that's a good thing for some people and not a good thing for others, but we will see what happens. And as I say, we've got the Crime Stoppers hotline. So I've got lots and lots of other information. These are the detailed notes that I took following David Carrick. I wanted to have a meeting straight away with West Yorkshire Police and find out what was going on in West Yorkshire. These are the notes I took verbatim. I brought them for more information if you wanted it. But I wanted to give you assurance that we were asking the right questions. But as I said earlier, we don't know what we don't know. You're as strong as your weakest link. And are there police officers in West Yorkshire who should not and should never have been here? Absolutely. and what we need to do is work together to identify who those people are, give confidence to victims, partners, families, community members who know who they are, and give us the evidence we need to get rid of them.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I'll preface my comments with some huge support for West Yorkshire Police. I think it's a great job. The vast majority of officers in the force do a great job, and the figures show that, and the action inspection show that as well. But if we take the personalities out of it, just look at some facts. I mean, I've read the Baroness case, and it's 300 pages. It's quite tough reading. And I particularly looked at the areas around firearms and protection swap, which were very concerned around organisational culture.
Yeah, it's plausible.
Yeah. So, and if you then look, if you sort of cast your eye over the news story over the last year, say, for West Yorkshire Police, there are quite a lot of cases that have come to the fore. Maybe because of the culture, how things have been reported better. That may be the case, but nevertheless, we've had a number of cases, including the recent one with the Marine, the defamation case that the force lost. The first time any force has ever lost such a serious defamation case. There's been incidents of complaint about West Yorkshire is not taking a complaint about a certain officer's wife seriously. I mean, I don't go into the details.
I don't know about that one, so maybe tell me.
There's a number of, if you go through the meeting, there's a number of issues which, going back to the consumer satisfaction in the force, and I think it probably would be beneficial for assurance for yourself and for the chief, as you said, we don't know what we don't know, and asking for an internal review of something is maybe would benefit from some sort of external dip sample. Just to check that information that everybody believes to be the case is in fact the case, because I think it came out loud and clear from the case review to me that it was organisational culture that, if it hadn't been for that investigation, wouldn't have come to light. So I think my question is, without going into the details of things, is does it benefit from a third party looking at it? And that's something for you to, I think about and come back to the panel and share with us whether you feel that's necessary for your assurance, to assure us, or not. The other thing I would say is a couple of points you raised at PSD set the context of the Met. Going back to my role as chair of the Independent Audit and Ethics Committee, 3 years ago it came to light that the force were only carrying out the annual appraisals. I think it was as low as 20%. I'm looking at Julie now to see if you can remember. So, in terms of circumstances, three or 4 years ago, they changed the HR system, as a result of which they went from an annual appraisal to a service date, I think, appointment date. They lost track of where it was, and then when we asked for some stats, I think it came to only about 18% had been completed. 18%. It then has taken them 3 years to get back on track. So to comment that we're back on track now, yeah, but 3 years ago we weren't, and 3 years ago you didn't even know that you weren't on track. So I'm not knocking West Yorkshire Police. Things happen in organisations. I'm just saying I think it may be appropriate with all this information we've got here and all this intelligence coming through to look at or to consider independent dip sampling to make sure that we are all completely assured that what we believe to be the case is the case. Because it would be very awkward if in a future time something came out and it wasn't the case and we haven't had that assurance.
Yeah. So clearly the decision about whether or not to audit West Yorkshire Police is a matter for the Chief Constable, and we do suggest from time to time that some external view of the matter might be beneficial, and actually there are a couple of instances where that has been successful and those reviews have happened, and we're just awaiting actually a report from a part of the force, which I won't mention, where we had some external triangulation from a source that told us that things weren't quite as they were described, An investigation took place, and then we asked for a cultural audit to take place, which has happened. West Yorkshire Police, I think, are open to that sort of thing. There's another matter that's happened in part of the force where we've requested that cultural audit, and they're considering it, so we haven't got a decision yet. So I think that West Yorkshire Police are open to proportionate responses to evident need, and we were able to evidence that need. I think that we've got lots and lots of independent ways. So we've got another independent auditor who I meet with and I've just met with recently, and he obviously takes account of a variety of external reports, documents, investigations that he does himself with his team, and then he sends those to us. And we've not had anything really that would give us cause to believe that we need to have a massive internal or external investigation as a result of that. But I am always open to having those conversations with the chief. But we need to have, I think we need to have evidence that something is seriously wrong. I'm not saying that it isn't, but we need to have evidence of that for me to be able to convince him to invest that money at a time when policing and all public services are under scrutiny. I will also say that we are working with Dame Casey here in West Yorkshire. We met her over the summer to talk about the work that she did at the Met, and we've agreed to set up a board task force here in West Yorkshire. More will come later as that develops, which will comprise 2 police officers, Chief Inspector and a Sergeant, working alongside a Superintendent Bordley that we've already got in place and have had in place for several years, working as part of the VRP. And this task force is going to be looking not just at what we're doing externally, but also internally. And so, Dame Casey is going to be working with us alongside that. We're just working out what that looks like logistically. So I think that some of that external rigour will be there, and look forward to reporting more on that when we know more.
I can just come back briefly, thanks. You've clearly got a range of other sources of intelligence for you to triangulate to help you, and I think that would be useful if perhaps we could have a paper on the points you've raised today from the PSD, on the other areas. It's pretty really to help us, assure us that you're getting your assurance from a range of different sources.
Yeah, I mean, some of it I'm not going to tell you about because I don't want to expose the people.
You're not going to compromise the sources, but your explanation alone is sufficient to give me some more confidence that you have a range of different sources. I think I disagree with the comment around until we've got evidence there's a problem in a certain area.
Well, we know there's a problem. We know there's a problem, which is why we're constantly asking for reports. But we are talking about a Casey-style review in West Yorkshire. And what I'm saying is that I would really be saying to government, let's have a Casey-style review of every force. Because I think that would be more appropriate. But I'd be asking West Yorkshire and the people of West Yorkshire to invest a lot of money, a lot of money in having that review, when I've not got the massive red flag that I can justify that expenditure at this time. That might change tomorrow, that might change next week. I would rather the government fund a review of policing rather than we do that in West Yorkshire. Bearing in mind there's been one done in the Met, we've got coterminosities here, and we've had reassurance about the big ticket items that were raised by Dame Louise Casey, who is coming to West Yorkshire and will give us some of her expertise to help us to further check whether or not things are as they have been described.
Yeah. I'm not suggesting for a minute you should do a full case review. It was just dip sampling elements of organisational culture across the organisation, which could be done probably quite cost effectively.
Well, we'll take that back to PSD. But we do that. We do, because every time we get, and I can give you quite a lot of examples outside of this meeting of cases that have been raised with us where we put that mirror up to West Yorkshire and then investigations have taken place where reports have been made of perceived improper practice, and then we've had full reports into those. And so I think they're a form of dip sampling. Karen, obviously, not only does she do the police reviews, she also is in charge of all the casework team. We get hundreds of casework items, complaints come in every year. There are opportunities to be able to look at themes, be able to understand what's happening. And she does report those back to me, and we do meet regularly with the team to understand what our key lines of inquiry might be, and then we talk to those, raise those with the Chief Constable. But I would definitely ask if they can formalise that process within PSD.
So the situation that came up in May this year, where there was a senior officer from West Yorkshire Police on secondment to the Met, who I think through the IPCC for allegations of bullying and discrimination. You would take that as a basis to therefore look into that in more detail, would you?
Well, potentially, but as I know exactly what happened and had a report from a variety of sources around that, then possibly not. That was an historical allegation that went back about 3 years. So it wasn't an allegation about that person in their current role. It was previous allegations.
When they were at West Yorkshire?
When they were at West Yorkshire.
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
Time when they were at West Yorkshire.
Which was fully investigated, an outcome delivered, and that was put to bed. And of course, we've got a system of...
So that's an example of how you would kind of dip sample something.
Oh yeah, exactly. And so we had a former officer, I'll give you a little example, a former officer rang us up, made an allegation about practice that they didn't feel was in line with our values or the values of West Yorkshire. We put that to the Chief Constable. We got a substantial report because it was quite a serious allegation, and there were some elements of it were found to have substance. The cultural audit has gone into that service and we're awaiting the outcome. I've spoken to the person who's done the cultural audit, who was an independent practitioner, and I've already met that person, who says actually there are some issues, but the substance of the allegations that were made have not been evidenced through the work that she's done. But we're going to get that report.
Well, you've clearly got a process in place. So perhaps, Chair, if we can minute that, if we can get a paper, and there's a lot of information there, isn't there?
Yeah.
That would give us some more reassurance. It would really help.
Yeah. I mean, so many people. As soon as they tell me stuff, right, let's get that sorted. And we're constantly getting reports back from West Yorkshire Police. I'll give you some examples.
Okay.
High level.
A lot of what I was going to ask been covered, Chair, but if we could just go back to Karen's report, if that's all right, it's kind of deflected onto the wider issues. Thanks, Karen, for your report. When you presented that report, or a similar report to us last year, we talked about the potential for training for the complaints handlers at the time. It was something that you were looking at, and we just wondered whether there'd been scope for that to go ahead, and you were comfortable now that everybody involved was fully trained up. Sorry.
I mean, I can only talk about my team and the reviewers. There hasn't been any formal training provided by the IOPC or the Home Office in the same way that they did when they talked about the introduction of the new responsibilities. However, there is a former Chief Executive of one of the OPCCs, the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, who did put on some training earlier on this year that a new member of my team attended. So all three of us are now fully trained. But we keep in touch with the IOPC. We have regular workshops with them, and we also Sankers provide reviews for a number of offices of police and crime commissioners, and they run workshops, and we get involved in all of those. We're hosting one next month for Sankers for our region. So we try and stay on top of best practice. I have to say, whenever we go to these, we always come away reassured about the methods that we use, are as good as anywhere else, and perhaps better in some cases. So we do try and keep up to date. And you'll see on that report we did introduce a further question in our review process following one of these workshops that we went to. So if there's any learning to be gained, then we're always keen to implement that.
That's great, thank you. I think that just reassures us back with the conversations we've had previously. And just, I don't quite know who would want to answer this, but just in terms of the report from PSD, what we don't get a sense of, though I think you have in your explanation of it given us is a sense of the kind of how the themes from complaints and how the kind of any strategic threads are then used to influence training, development, processes and procedures really. So I don't think that's something you'd want to spend now or covering in a further report later, but I think we get a sense that there are the complaints that they're addressed and that they're dealt with, but it's kind of how that learning is used as part of the triangulation that you described to influence change where change is needed, and obviously.
Yeah, and obviously that's what we want, so we will say to the police, so you know, we'll raise an issue about practice around stalking, and then they'll set up stalking coordination, and the learning and development that then is happening in the stalking coordination unit is as a direct result of our challenge, which is great. We know that the domestic abuse policy has been amended as a result of feedback that we gave to West Yorkshire Police following comments and feedback from the public on the board work that we were doing, and on the race work, for example. I'm really delighted to say that West Yorkshire Police have now introduced the QR code. So anyone who stops and searched will be given a QR code that they can download on the phone, and that takes them to the West Yorkshire Police website that tells them why they've been stopped and searched, that then gives them the opportunity to complain. Because I know that the reason they don't get lots of complaints about stop and search is because nobody knows how to do it, nobody understands that they can do it, and now, as a result of our challenge, that has just happened over the summer, so I'm delighted, and we're asking for updates as to that. We were told by a charity that West Yorkshire Police were collecting fingerprint data on the roadside and then sharing that fingerprint data with the Home Office database, which we all felt was racist, and we challenged West Yorkshire Police on that. And West Yorkshire Police created a protocol around that, made it sanctioned only by inspector or above, which wasn't the case before. Anyone could just do it, any police officer could just do it. Now it's a proper process, and we've seen the flow chart that's been introduced as part of the training for people who want to, for officers taking fingerprints, and what steps need to go through if they want to refer those fingerprints to the national database, for example. So these are small things, but they're big in terms of the influence we're having on the values and the way that those values are lived here in West Yorkshire. And I just want to add, Chair, sorry, that when I said that we needed a national review, in fact there is a national review, so there's the Angelini inquiries taking place. So the first half is looking at Wayne Cousins' career and how he was allowed to get to where he got to. But the second half will be looking at issues with policing generally. That hasn't started yet, but that will offer us some really tangible opportunities to have a deep dive here again into West Yorkshire and see whether or not there are further lessons for us.
Thank you. I think that's really useful, because what it reassures us is you're not just taking the report that they've got, which says what they do. And if I'm going to tell you I'm brilliant, in a report, actually then you really do hold to account those people over the opportunity to influence and make the change that's going to make the improvements that we need to see for people in West Yorkshire, and that really is what interests us in terms of being reassured that the approach you're taking is making those differences. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Just a point of clarification. With the home force for empaths, aren't we?
Yeah.
And still for NECTU?
Ooh, I don't know.
Do you remember the home force of the transfer?
Yeah, we'll check that.
I think we were.
I don't think we might. Well, let's check, because we haven't had any papers on it, so possibly not.
Just from an HR perspective, in terms of organisational culture, it's just being clearly empaths, that would be come on yourself.
Those are chaired board, locally I sit on the national board. That's another big story.
Check
we can update you on if you want to.
Just to check on whether NECTU, what our kind of responsibility is around that, if we are still hosting that from an HR perspective.
Not sure we are, but we'll find out.
Okay, thanks, Alison. Thanks for the work you did with police. There's no more questions this item, no? Okay, we move on now to item 7. You can keep the same.
Yeah, so this is linked to the priority within the police and crime plan So we report on each of the 4 priorities at each meeting. Well, we take one priority and report that back. So really happy to answer any questions that people might have.
Would there anyone want to ask any questions on this one? Is it this?
Thanks, Chair. On page 4, the bus safety feedback tool and safer travel. Great initiative, and I just wanted to know if you had a time frame for recruiting PCSOs onto transport bus.
Yes, no, this is a benefit of having devolution, and the mayor is that, you know, we've got influence across a range of arenas, and this is a brilliant opportunity for the PCSOs who have now been recruited and will be starting. I think they're in the training, so there's a 13-week training course for PCSOs. The sergeant has been in force since June, I think. And the PCSOs, I think, starting in October, 1st of October. Yeah, so that's a launch date, 1st of October. But the tool is brilliant because the tool gives power back to the public and to the people of West Yorkshire, because if you use the tool to tell us where the problem areas are, that will be used to deploy the PCSOs. So please download that tool, use it, help us to deal with the issues in your areas.
Alison, could you tell us a bit more about anti-slavery partnership?
Yeah, so West Yorkshire Anti-Slavery Partnership, WYASP, is a partnership of key individuals, organisations, charities, national players that come together every quarter to understand what's happening with modern slavery here in West Yorkshire, what our role and response could and should be, sharing good practice, highlighting emerging issues. We listen to the Slavery Commissioner to understand what we could do differently, better about any legislation that's coming up. But also we get a presentation from policing to tell us about what's happening in terms of people being exploited. We also hear about the national referral mechanism, how that's working, how it's not working, which is the way that people who've been exploited can get support and hopefully not be criminalised as a result of being exploited into criminal activity. Key ways that people are exploited, of course, is car washes, nail bars. Criminal ways that people are exploited is through the cannabis farms. We've had lots and lots of good news stories about how police have found lots of cannabis farms across West Yorkshire, and the people looking after them are in the main exploited. So it's a great forum, very, very popular. And Neil has now just taken over servicing WYASP and was keen that we didn't do anything to it because it's working perfectly and everybody's really happy. Neil, anything I've missed that you would like to add?
No, just the next meeting for WYASP is at the end of September this month. I mean, it's over 180 people on the mailing list for that. It's a very well attended group, extremely energetic group. It's in good health.
Thank you. I know you do some brilliant work in this year to keep you safe. So just continue doing it, and because that's what we're here to keep this Yorkshire residents safe and what's going on.
I should just say we also have businesses there, and we talk about having processes and policies to prevent businesses illegally exploiting workers. So it's very broad ranging.
This is really good because that's what most big business try and do.
Well, I don't know that most do. They sometimes inadvertently.
It's like workers, they need a place, they need the work doing, so yes, we need to keep organized. You had a question, yeah?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. On page 3, item 4.1.1, it's good to see that the bid has been appointed, the provider has been appointed for joint funding on the side. Just wondered, are you comfortable that that funding is in place for the whole of that period?
Yeah, it's in place, and we just and we'll in the next 18 months go out to recommission the children's SARC. And what's great is that now we've got the NHS on board. It gives real clarity about the standards. So there are lots of standards that we understand about forensics and all the rest of it, and the physical building. But now all the clinical stuff through the NHS will also be secure. So yeah, really happy. It's a partnership with PCCs across Yorkshire and Humber. So South Yorkshire, North Yorkshire, us and Humber side. So it's a great resource.
Yeah. Because there are a number of things that NHS pulled out of the support in the A&E units, reducing knife plan, they pulled out of that one. The Navigator programme, that was a trial for 2 years.
No, it's continuing, the Navigator programme, because we're funding it, aren't we?
Yeah, so the VRP have stood in that space and are continuing the programme with so it is continuing.
It was still continuing.
Yeah, through the VRP.
Okay. I think that was my concern, that given the pressures on the NHS over the next 4 years, are they going to pull out of some of this funding?
This is the statutory function that they've got. So, it's struggle.
That's it now.
Again, Christine.
Chair, if I may, it's all right, Deputy Mayor, I found my notes about the number of PCSOs and the numbers of when they're going to be in place. So we've already got 5, in terms of safer travel, we've got 5 PCSOs already on the ground. As you said, furthermore in training, 6 will be starting in October and a further 4 in January. Not bad.
And that's across West Yorkshire.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Lovely, thank you. As a people so we now move on to standard item 9, the mayor response to any current issue. Is there any issue we want to estimate the mayor issue?
Yeah, I've just got to find the notes, I've just put yeah, here they are. So, yeah, I just wanted to tell you about a couple of things. So, I've already referred to the letter from Suella Brown to Chief Constables and PCCs telling us that she's initiated an HMIC inspection into what I don't call wokery. She didn't use that term, but I think she meant to use that term, which is very disappointing because basically there's better things for the police to be getting involved in than that. And in the letter that was sent to us, she's particularly focusing it on how police hate crime, their involvement with transphobic hate crime. She mentioned in the letter wearing of rainbow laces, attendance at Pride. She's got concerns about police networks, staff networks, that's across the board, and taking the knee and any other thing, wearing badges of any kind. The only thing that she sanctions is involvement, Poppy's involvement in armed forces events. So that's a letter that's been sent to us all and to Chief Constables, and that'll be happening, I think, reporting next year at some point. She also sent a letter to Chief Constables telling them that they had to investigate everything, so you'll see this on the BBC, as did I, and I hoped someone would ring me and ask me for a quote, but they didn't, unfortunately. And I just wanted to impress upon you all the ridiculousness of the expectation that the police can investigate everything. Yes, we've got 20,000 more police officers nationally, but we lost 20,000 police officers from 2010. The number of crimes has gone up, the complexity of crimes has gone up, and also the population has gone up. So per capita, we have more crime than we had in 2010. The other factor, of course, is that we have experienced considerable cuts, especially last year. This year, you all had a precept report that talked about 26 million pounds worth of cuts and the loss of 70 PCSOs. There'll be further paper. I don't know what the detail is yet because we've got a paper up meeting on the 16th of September, which will give us the predictions for the budget next year, early predictions. But I'm expecting another 20+ million pounds worth of cuts. And there was a 4-year projection that was well over a billion, well over 100 million over that 4 years, which you all got in February. So what's happening is that staff and PCSOs are the resource that is being cut. So you've got your 20,000 at the front end, which is not enough, but they are the beginning to replace the functions that were previously done by police staff and PCSOs. Well, not PCSOs because they're the eyes and ears out, but they're the really visible policing, and they're being lost in entirety. So it's not true to say that we've got the resources, and I wouldn't want the public of West Yorkshire to be lied to and think that we're not doing a good job here, holding the police to account for the visibility of policing, doing the best that we can do. I should also say that of the 900 plus new officers that we've been able to recruit across West Yorkshire over the last 3 years, 106 of those have been mandated by government to go into the ROCU, the Yorkshire Regional Organised Crime Unit, and other officers are mandated to go into other parts of the specialist areas. So you've not even got the ability to deploy those resources in the areas where we feel need those resources, let alone the public of West Yorkshire. So it's smoke and mirrors, don't believe it.
And been asked for more funding
of
and
course.
more police, because if she wants everything to be investigated, there should be more funding and more police to do.
Yeah, well, you'll be happy to know I've got a face-to-face meeting. Tracy and I have got a face-to-face meeting on the 31st of October, and we will be putting that to her, along with other things.
She's very hard working, isn't she?
I can't possibly comment. An update on nitrous oxide. I just thought I'd just really briefly tell you that nitrous oxide is becoming a bigger and bigger issue in our communities. Lots of people raising it as a concern with us. It's going to be criminalised and made a Class C drug, I think in the new year, and whereas it's welcome in some ways because obviously it's it's emerging that it's a very harmful drug in terms of neurological damage that it can do, particularly to young people who seem to be using it more and more. We don't have a lot of evidence about who's using it because it doesn't live in the system for very long, and so we need to get more information about how long about who's using it and what the numbers are. But anecdotally, there's a feeling that it's increasing. So just to say that I chair the Combating Drugs Strategy Group, which it brings together all the combating drugs partnerships across West Yorkshire with the 5 directors of public health. We met this week and we've agreed that we're going to work with the BRP to do a piece of work around prevalence, not just of NOx, but also other so-called recreational drugs, not cannabis, because there's lots of information about cannabis, to see whether or not we can get a picture of use and abuse here in West Yorkshire. And then we're committed to working with our partners to develop a pathway and support for young people, because we want a harm reduction approach, not a criminal justice approach. We don't want young people criminalised for using nitrous oxide. We want support to give them, we want prevention in place. We don't want young people doing it in the first place, but if they are doing it, we want to help them to exit nitrous oxide use through a harm reduction approach, and we want those partnerships that we've already got in drugs loans to be helping us to do so. So I just thought you'd like to have that reassurance. Yeah, just also to say that Tracy and I have had a letter from the cooperative group and the British Retail Consortium raising concerns about retail crime and policing response to that, and we've agreed that we will meet with both, and that's currently being arranged. But we've also asked for a paper at the COM, the Community Outcomes Meeting, on retail crime, business crime, to be brought, and that is happening, is it October the next one? So October is the next COM. It's live streamed, so you can all watch it. And the papers obviously are public, so you'll be able to see what the police say about that. And we had asked for that actually about 3-4 months ago, so we understood that this was going to be an issue. So hopefully we'll get some good...
Was that the one who brought up to your meeting?
Yes, I think he did, yes. And then finally, just to give a very brief update on 2 big events that happened here in West Yorkshire, the Leeds Caribbean Carnival and Leeds Fest. So both went as well as could be expected. The Caribbean Carnival, which I attended, had very low visible policing, which I think was a very good thing. There was a bit more non-visible policing, I should say, but that level of visibility I think was really well taken by the communities, and there was 1 arrest, which is very good news. Leeds Fest, as you know, there was the tragic death of David Chilino last year. I spoke to David's parents with the chair of licensing in Leeds, and we agreed a series of interventions that we would request. The police were much more heavily present, I think funded by the festival. This time there were lots and lots of young people safeguarded as a result of that. There were 79 arrests 50 of them drug-related, but no deaths, no serious injury, and I'm glad to say that two great events went off here in West Yorkshire, and young people got home. Thank you.
So the carnival, the police what was at the carnival was very good, interactive and just be a part. They was working but they didn't stand out and so I was looking for trouble. They was just a part of the carnival. Yes, it was very good.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank you and support you for your comments. You know, it's really frustrating when people develop policy on the hood to try and meet the political imperative and get a good headline, because it never results in good policy. And I'm very pleased to hear that you intend to hold the Home Secretary to account for this, and hats off to you, and thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Do you need me to use the microphone?
I don't think it's about me, I think it's about the people watching at home.
I think because I'm wearing hearing aids, I'm really grateful. Thank you to everyone for using that. It's just a point of clarification about a similar point. In case I've misheard the stuff about the wokery at the beginning, so are we to expect that there's a potential of, you know, I don't know whether this is the police or people in general, to be smiled upon or frowned upon in terms of wearing a poppy or a rainbow badge? So if I
So
wear
a poppy is good,
yeah.
a rainbow badge is bad.
Yeah, that's
according to some. No, not according to me, the mother of two gay children, but according to others. Yeah.
The
so
letter,
I'm astounded by that, actually.
The letter is online. If you go onto the HMICFRS website, you can read the letter there that's committing HMIC to do this.
Yeah, and Andy Cook, who's lead HMI, he's doing the investigation, he's doing the inspection himself.
Yeah.
So we don't know what the outcome will be. Hopefully he'll say there isn't a problem. All police need to engage with the communities that they serve. They need to create trust and confidence in those communities and actually carry on. Or he'll say there's a big issue and you know, some things might change. But you know, it's about timing it and how much time they've got to make things change.
Absolutely, and the you know, the signal that's given to young people that I'm a governor at various schools, and you know, that is a really difficult message to be.
Yeah, well, I was at Leeds Pride this year I've been at all Prides, apart from Wakefield, for various reasons, but all Prides this year, and Leeds, the police attended, they were all on leave, they all took leave, but came in their own time, in uniform in case they were needed, because they would have snapped into action, of course. And the love that was given by the tens of thousands of people in attendance was unbelievable. The hate on social media by a very small band of about 20 people was indescribable, but the love that was given by the people who saw them there and were really happy to see them. The fire were there, they got no hate, got lots of love but no hate. Ambulance were there, got no hate, lots of love. So you see the point.
That's reassuring. Thank you.
Yeah. I was just wondering, Alison, why is it wrong to wear the rainbow badge? Why is it?
Well, it's not, is it? But
I know it's not, but what is the reason?
So it's about showing affiliation or affinity with one group over another.
But we do have police of LGBT. So why is it? Is freedom of speech is who you is that? I don't think it's fair.
Well, it'll come out through this inspection. Let's see where we end up.
I hope it does come out and surface. Any more? Thank you, Alison. Keep pressuring. Item 9. Decision. Public is up to no answer. The public decision, we just send that one. The date, I remember. Yes, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I haven't got the detail to pull up right now, but I did have a quick look. It's just there's a couple of decisions in here, right, consultancy. very useful. There's one that just struck me about the service directory. It might be the way it's been written. It read as if somebody was being paid consultancy. So it's a good idea to pull everything together into a directory. Didn't seem to make sense to me. I think that's a given, isn't it?
Yeah. I think the consultancy is around pulling together that, because I read in the VRP section actually in these papers, the VRP have got a service directory, and they've obviously, so every time they commission a piece of work, that's called a consultancy. When the any research is a consultancy, but it's actually activity that's then underpinning the work that they do. So so this piece of work that was undertaken, it was obviously something that was identified as a gap, so they've commissioned somebody to do it, but it comes up as a consultancy.
Okay.
Any other? No? Thank you. So we move on to item 11. My case is a mixed up. 10. The action plan. This was a reaction plan. But I only had one, so I didn't put the papers in order. Sorry.
No, I know you're not very Can I just say, under the item from the 9th of December, 6.6.2, we think that's complete.
9th of December.
Yeah, I mean, more women than men report cybercrime. That's just a fact. So we don't think there's any more work for us to do. I think it was the previous chair was really interested to understand why women were reporting more cybercrime. I think the Chief Constable suggested that it might be about the level of romance fraud. We don't know. We didn't, and that wasn't a fact. That was something that is suggested might be one of the contributing factors, but we don't know. But the fact is, women report more cybercrime.
So we've linked there a paper, a national paper that looks at cybercrime across England and Wales, and it is a fact that on that paper it talks about women do report more than men. So it's not just West Yorkshire. What the ask was whether it was something different in West Yorkshire to anywhere else. It's not. It's a national thing. So I think we've answered the question.
Okay. Sorry? Yeah, so that one was yeah. So let's go back to March the 10th. So it was video supporting the School Completes campaign. Is that still going on? March 2023, that's ongoing.
I don't know which one it is. Can you see? 7.0.
So it's just at the top of the next page.
10th March.
Oh, nice. See? Oh, right, yeah, so this was the mental health campaign where Black Boy Joy, I talked about Black Boy Joy, there was a link to the Black Boy Joy video. I thought we'd sent it ages ago. Happy to send it, yeah. We'll have to find it and send it.
I'm just going to go through all the ongoing and clarify.
Yeah, I thought we had sent it, and Wendy thinks that we sent it, but we'll send it again.
Yeah.
What about breakdown of rate money per district? That's again just below the one that you just looked at.
Yeah. This is held by our contracts and commissioning team, but when the next time we do a report on car vehicle offences, we'll bring that breakdown to the paper.
Okay. I won't go back to June as Chief Constable at 8 to 171 in June. Yeah, we're working with these members are any other ongoing that we'd like to know about, no? I'm sure you'll keep us up to date on this. Thank you. We move on to item 11 now, follow-up plan. That's just one, this is everyone's okay. We have up to December meeting. So that's with the pilot members. Meeting, deputy chair will be chair in November. I won't be here in November meeting. Okay. So he remains there. Thank you.
Chair, can I just ask a question? It says under November, Mayor's Precinct proposal and budget survey. Are we going to have the results of the survey or does it look?
No, we're having a discussion. Sorry, Neil, do you want to?
No, it's just the prelims. Yeah, so the result comes in the new year.
Yeah? Okay, thanks. Compare it to the panel. What is that? That's right. There's something to report on this one. Thank you. I've read them, but I need to digest them. Item 13. This is if you want any of the business. No? Thank you. So just taking on to item 14. Date and time of next meeting. I will be 10th of November here. Don't forget pre-meeting at 9 o'clock. This pre-meeting was to get into the main meeting and the certain discussions. So I'd like all members to be here at 9 to share it. Okay. Thank you.
So we have a private meeting.
That's the one I call the pre-meeting.
16 October.
Oh, the one is October. We have a private meeting. 10 o'clock. There won't be a pre-meeting. We'll be here at 10.
9:30 for October private meeting.
Yeah.
Back on this.
This tablet's too strong. It's true now. We're paying. So thank you all for coming. And thank you for being with me today for one time. Thank you. See you soon. Thank you very much.